Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BGSD's webinar on positive leadership. My name is Dr. Lai Pak Hua. I'm the principal of the Biblical Graduate School of Theology. In a few more minutes, we should be starting soon. We welcome you once again to join us in our webinar on this topic. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BGSD. Good evening to all. Welcome once again to our webinar on positive leadership. Tonight, we are glad to have Dr. Jeremy Gree to join us for this event. Now, we have about 50 over people who have signed up for this event. I'd like to just give ourselves a few more minutes for the people who join in. I think some of them are just finishing up with their dinner, but we are so glad to have you with us and also excited that Jeremy will share with us his perspectives on leadership, having been in the banking world as a senior at the C-suite senior management for the last 30 over years. Okay. So now in a little while I'll give you more introductions to Jeremy, but let's wait for a few more moments before we start the program. Thank you. Well, as we wait for the more people to join us, let me just give a short introduction to our program and Dr. Jeremy Gree. Once again, welcome to all to our webinar on positive leadership. My name is Dr. Lai Pak Hua. I'm the principal of the Biblical Graduate School of Theology, where we shall explore both from a biblical and also a management perspective on what does it mean to have good leadership and how could Christians incorporate positive leadership as an approach to leading our people. Can we have the next slide? Now, after a brief introduction, we will start the keynote. The keynote should last about 30 minutes. Thereafter, we will have a short time of Q&A. I think by now, most of you are really familiar with Zoom, and there is a Q&A button where you can feel free to ask your questions to Jeremy. At the same time, upvote whatever questions you prefer to be answered first. And then thereafter, we're going to have pushing towards 9 o'clock, we will have a short, just some announcement before we do a wrap up. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Well, firstly, just a brief on Dr. Jeremy Gree. Jeremy has had more than 30 years of leadership experience, particularly in the IT and more recently in the banking sector. He now serves as the director delivery partnerships at the Institute of Training and Occupational Learning for Asia and Australia. Now, ITOL is a UK-based training firm, and Dr. Jeremy also represents Barclay Graduate University, which is a Christian university that's focused on training people in urban missions and also transformational leadership. Now, the time now is 8:06. I think without further ado, I will hand the time to Jeremy. Look forward to hearing from you, hearing some positive news from you, Jeremy. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Pak Hua. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for sharing this evening with me on this interesting subject called positive leadership. Let me just get this to white slide. Yep. Well, a bit of my background, like Pak Hua said, I spent most of my years, my career in banking and financial services, but I retired about 2.5 years back, and then I just focused on doing what I missed actually doing during my career, which is all of this management stuff. Some people ask me why I did not do this during my career years. It's because when you do this sort of things like management and HR and so forth, you don't make a lot of money. So this is not where the money is. So as a real bank, and it's not as exciting as actually being a banker itself. But now I sort of spend my time actually researching into all of these subjects with respect to management and personal development. The thing, and I hope that some of you would be able to connect with me over LinkedIn, and then we can also have this discussion further. You know, I first came across this topic, positive leadership, when I was studying positive psychology, and we studied this under the section called, positive organization. And like many people, we are very curious about when people talk about positive leadership, positive organization, because most of these people are academic and may not have led any organization. So in fact, I was very skeptical and cynical about what they were trying to tell me. And so over the years, I've actually taken the trouble myself to research into this area of positive leadership. And the reason why I've researched into this area of positive leadership is simply because all corporations at this point in time is undergoing so-called a renewal phase, right? This is supposed to, organizations are supposed to be socially sensitive kind of thing nowadays, right? That social responsibility is no longer philanthropic, you know, no longer giving just money to charity, but also behaving well as an organization towards your staff and your other stakeholders. So this therefore gives sort of a platform to things like positive leadership. But if you look at the subject of positive, it is an extension of what many of those of you who have studied management back in the 1980s and 90s, that this is about how we talk about how you go in and motivate your staff and do all the good things to your staff. But now, but now the fact is that this whole realm of positive psychology has been launched. And so now people talk in terms of positive leadership. So the thing about it is that whenever people are around, guess what? There is bound to be different values, needs, idiosyncrasies in the workplace, and therefore we talk about people clashing with one another inevitably, right? Even the church fathers, when they went into the desert to search for God, what they found was that they had to deal with themselves. That is a matter of fact. Remember these words of Peter Drucker whenever you look at leadership. He says only three things naturally happen in organization: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. Okay, so that's why it's important. And now particularly, it's just not leadership, but positive leadership. A good friend of mine wrote this book called The Organizational Zoo, and it's taught as a class. And I'm one of the practitioners of Organizational Zoo together with Arthur Shelley. He is a professor down at the RMIT. And he says that when you look at organizations, you think of the organization like a zoo, where animals are not closely associated, right? Like officers, people may not be close, but they are pushed together into cages and forced to interact against the will. So the office itself can tend to be an unnatural environment. And so much so that nowadays, when you find the conversation where people say, do you like to go back to work or work from home? Many people, right? I think not too long ago, a few days ago, there was a survey. Many people prefer to actually stay at home than to actually go to the office and work. So you realize that the office isn't that friendly after all. So Arthur therefore put together that we have got two types of offices that we can actually try to put together. One is a positive zoo, right? A place, your home, your club, where it is welcoming, friendly, diverse, open, inspiring, playful, pleasant, productive, respected, balanced, social, stimulating. It is not a place you want to live. So then you look at the negative side of it and why people don't want to go back to office. It could perhaps be because it is negative, it is political, negative, territorial, backward, decisive, frustrating, change adverse, manipulative, nasty, procrastinating, dangerous, draining. It is not a place you want to stay in. So people, therefore, naturally, you find that many people who put up their hands and prefer to work from home could be actually facing such work environment. So what actually is positive leadership? Okay, so we can go down the academic route and look at all these conversations about what positive leadership is. And when I started this journey, on an academic journey when I was doing my doctorate degree. And then I looked into it, and when I was studying positive psychology, I looked into all of this, and there isn't really a single definition that we can get on what positive psychology is. But roughly it's about influencing people, encouraging them to flourish in their work. Later we'll take a look at this word called flourish. It is very, very popular word that many people use, but do not understand what it actually means. Or employees appreciate leaders or the leaders who encourage them and who focus on their strength. Or we can say that it's giving support and behaving ethically, okay, was shown to have positive effects on employees. So there's a whole plethora of literature on trying to define what positive leadership is. Point is that conversation is still going on, just like the definition of leadership. It has never been conclusive. And then you have the academy or management who say that positive workplace relationship leads to flourishing. Okay, that means to say that you do task assistance, career advancement, all of these things that you can do, it leads to flourishing. So just imagine the headache that the HR people go through, right? The headache that everybody said, well, you got to plan for advancement, you got to plan for emotional support, personal growth, so that people will be satisfied. And year after year, we guys are always doing some kind of workplace engagement score right through Gallup. Then you talk about the word flourishing, as I want to say to you. The word flourishing is the product of the pursuit and engagement of authentic life that brings inner joy and happiness through meeting goals and being connected with life passions, relishing in accomplishment through the peaks and troughs of life. Guess what? You hear this definition, I bet you don't have a clue as to how you are going to operationalize it. Because when you ask anybody what flourishing is or what thriving is, it is actually has many components, many definitions. And if you read all the doctoral theses and all the doctoral theses, and they all to flourish means different thing to different people. So we got to be very careful when people point out to you, say, oh, are you implementing positive leadership in your organization for the purposes that your people may flourish? You ask him, which part are we talking about? I bet you they don't have a clue as to what they are talking about. Most of these people out there who self-proclaim as leadership coach never actually led anything in their life. Sad to say, they may have not even led themselves. Okay, but you ask them to define this, they got no freaking clue as to how they, because I have got all these guys used to visit us as vendors, right, trying to sell these things, but they have not actually researched, many have not researched into these things, and we spend loads of money wasted on these people. And that was one of my frustration. And so one of my passion is actually to find out exactly this thing, what this thing is, and actually to tell people what I think it should be. So at the end of the day, just remember this. When people talk to you about positive leadership, just remember this simple line. All it takes is the best version of you. All it takes is the best version of you. And later on, I will talk about how we create the best version of us. At the end of the day, when we lead, who we are is how we lead. Who we are is how we lead. We cannot have a mask. We cannot have a mask. Somehow it will give, our true self will come out. Because the true self resonates, comes out, pours out in our words, in our actions, in our deeds. How we simply think about another, how we simply give thought about another will give us away. So it is what you have experienced, who you are now, and who you aim to be. Simply put, who you are and who you are, right? So most of us have got a certain way of leading because our parents have brought us up in a certain way. Most of us have got a certain way of leading because in school, our teachers have given us certain good and bad experience, right? Those of us guys who have served in the army, you have seen the good and the bad side of it. And some people pick up the bad side without realizing even that they picked up the bad side of it. Your behavior matters. And the more positive you lead, the more successful you have. So what is this word called the more positive you lead? Is something that you must, that I want to give you as your takeaway at the end of this session. Leadership at work. It is about formal leadership where a person is officially designated as a leader of a group. We cannot blame bureaucracy. Please, don't ever blame bureaucracy. There is a purpose for bureaucracy. And because we are talking about positive leadership and in the new world and in the informal working world, ladies and gentlemen, bureaucracy will continue to exist. No matter how flat the organization is, there is still going to be bureaucracy because it enables efficiency. There is always specialization. There is always a need for chain of command because we need to have clear responsibilities and accountabilities. You need to have this because you need to be meritocratic. You need to have this because there's a freedom from external pressure, efficiency, protection from arbitrariness, and so forth. Don't think that we can get rid of this sort of hierarchy. We live and we work within this hierarchy. It is the reality of life. Those who tell you that we don't need this hierarchy have never worked in their life. Have never need to lead in their life, because without this hierarchy, a lot of transparency, efficiency don't take place. But the most important thing you must realize is this, by Marcus Buckingham. If you can get this book, It is called the 9 lies about work. It says where people might care people might care which company they join, they don't care which company they work for. The truth is that once there, people care which team they are on. So when we talk about positive leadership, we talk about it at the team level. Any form of leadership is at the team level. Nobody at the team would actually be impacted by the CEO or whoever is in or the chairman of the bank, right? Nobody, those people don't know. But when they are day in, day out with members of the team, working in the team and the team dynamics matters. Therefore, this is among the best definition of leadership if anybody asks you, okay? Because it's all encompassing. It is about setting directions. It is about paying attention to the progress towards an aim. It is about holding group unity. It is attending to personal effectiveness throughout. Regardless, you cannot even say that it is, what kind of leadership is this? Is situational leadership, trait lead? No. Simply leadership by James Scala. A good working definition of leadership. At the end of it, when you look at that definition of leadership, it tells you that regardless of it, the manager has no choice but also to be a leader. There isn't going to be this discussion. Should a manager be a leader? No. The manager has no choice but to be a leader because he has got to motivate. He got to give attention to individual, got uphold group. At the same time, he got to be the manager to make sure that the work is done. Okay. So therefore, Scala says that the purpose of a leader is to make sure that there is leadership and to ensure that the 4 dimensions of leadership is being addressed. This means that, this is the important line, the red one. The leader does not always have to lead from the front. He or she can delegate or share part of the responsibility for leadership. This part, ladies and gentlemen, is new. The first statement is not new. The last statement in green, the buck still stopped with the leader, has always existed through the centuries. But what has changed is that now leaders don't need to lead from the front. He or she can delegate or share part of the responsibility of leadership. And that is the seed of leadership. That is the seed of positive leadership. The frame of mind is that I don't need to lead. I have got the confidence to delegate and share the responsibility of leadership. So this is what we call the leader-leader model. Okay? It is about leading through influence. It is about everyone in the team being a leader. That means everybody having a say. And it is about cultivating people around you to think and lead and not simply follow your lead. It is a change of perspective of what a leader should do. Before we talk about positive, it is a change of perspective of what a leader should do. The leader-leader model. And it begins with you. So the first thing, and Peter Drucker again, the first and foremost job of a leader is to take charge of your own energy and then help others orchestrate the energy of those around you. When I did my positive psychology, I did positive organization. The lecturer, the professor was not able to tell us how we are going to do it. They teach us a lot. So in this section, I'm going to show you all the methods, all the tools available outside. And you will put these tools together and you do it as a journey. You yourself will change in the way you lead. The first thing you should know about positive leadership is that it is a strength-based approach. Too many people undervalue what they are, what they are, and overvalue what they are not. So the only way you can maximize your strength is never by fixing your weakness. There is a need, and I hope later we have this conversation in the Q&A about weakness. Weakness is not weakness. Weakness is that if you misuse your strength, you will weakness. If you overuse your strength, the extreme of your strength could be a weakness. Right? So questions like, what's your strength and weakness in an interview? Is pure rubbish. The people who ask these questions have never sought out what on earth does it mean by strength and weakness. And the poor boy or girl sitting in front of the interviewee is left always in a quandrum. Likewise, in performance appraisal, you talk about what is your strength and weakness? What a load of rubbish. Do you ever try to fix your weakness? Have you ever tried to fix your weakness? Have you ever succeeded in fixing your weakness? You may have, but there lies that person in you that it always surfaces. That's why you're a sinful person. So a strength-based approach is simply people perform their best when working in their strength areas. Teams perform best when the teams itself is a balanced, complementary set of strength, because individuals may not be well-rounded. Yeah, individuals are not well-rounded. So it's about me doing my best, and it's about me finding what you do best so that the both of us can complement and do it differently. It's a strength-based approach. And this means that the whole leadership topic of positive leadership requires a change in vocabulary. A change in vocabulary. It starts with all these things, know thyself. And I'm trained in all these four methods, in all these three methods. I'm trained in Gallup, in DISC, and Belbin. These are good methods. Different organizations got different focus on it because the HR person only understands one and got no clue about the others. You must understand them in totality before you choose for your organization. That's why I went to study all three, and all three have got their own good and bad. But all the best thing about all three is that they help you to develop a good vocabulary to begin a strength-based approach. All of them give you a good vocabulary. So when you talk about know yourself, when you do your Gallup, DISC, or you do your Belbin, you first identify, if you identify your talent, your strength, whether you are D, I, or S, or C, or whatever combination, it defines your uniqueness. And it is time. It is time that you stand up and define your own uniqueness. Look yourself in the mirror and know what your talents are. Know how you frequently respond to certain things. And in certain ways that you respond, it becomes the best of you. It is not about label. Okay, it is not about label. That to say that, well, you know, you're introvert, extrovert, that kind. No such things. Strength-based got no such things. It's not that, oh, I don't have this strength, I want to have this strength. No, God did not wire you in that way. Whatever that is given, like the parable of the talent, you multiply your talent. You don't go and look for other talents. You multiply whatever that is given to you. So the thing is that your colleagues all have differences, and so differences are advantages, how you work together, right? And I teach this in one of the courses in BGST, how you work together, as well as people then need one another. That's when you need the strength-based approach. And if your organization has ever done Gallup, DISC, or Belbin and not tell you one of these, then they have wasted the test. They have wasted the assessment. They have not created the vocabulary nor the mechanism for you to start with talent and end with strength. So this is for us, never to take time. This is from the 7 habits Never too busy to take time to sharpen the sword. Never too busy to reflect on who you are. Then who are the other people? Who are your colleagues? Different approach will give you different ways of describing the team people in your, the people in your team. The Belbin, of all the three methods, Belbin is the only one who used this word called team roles. And team roles is simply your behavior in the team, because the behavior in the team is described as, the interaction of behavior is described as your team dynamics. And so different metaphors are used to describe different behaviors. But it is not that one behavior is better than the other. Each of the behavior have got a good side and a bad side. The thing about positive psychology is to work on the good side of it, right? And so who are the others? In the case of things like DISC, you can see in a kind of a radar chart. Things like Gallup, it is put together, the differences are put together in this sort of a chart. But it tells you who are the people to get. And when we teach teams on this, using either of the methods, it is to find complementarity and complementarity and synergy. Okay. It is important also that when you do it, that you have a sense of knowing what others say. This is your 360. This is your 360 feedback. This is an off-the-shelf program from 360, from Appraisal 360. Okay, it is a very good off-the-shelf program. The only problem I got organization using this is that they don't know how to interpret this. Okay, but it is a very good 360 program. Okay, and the other one is, of course, our good Johari window. The Johari window is one of the best tools that you can get every time when you have team building, you have icebreaker. Do this. This is what others say about you. You're blind, you know, what you know about yourself, what others know about you, what you know that others don't know, and what are the unknown. Belbin has got one of the best, because in the Belbin report, you not only get your own perception of yourself, your own perception, you also invite your colleagues, your managers to give their perceptions, and then you have an overall perception. That means to say that how you behave, this line here is the summation, is the average of all of what people think about you. And so leadership is a two-way thing. It is not only that you think about others, how your behavior is towards others, but it's also your consciousness of how others are reacting towards you. And at the end of it, you want to do an alignment of strength. And this is an alignment of strength from a Gallup perspective, where this team has got strong in executing, weak in influencing, but their top 5 strength was here. And this they are missing. And so they find people to complement where they are missing, right? Rather than trying to build it, okay? It is not possible, because if you try to fix your weakness, you will perpetually be swimming upstream. Remember, you are only as good as a leader as people think you are. You got to embrace differences. This is a very important point. Because then you say, oh yeah, positive, I treat everybody fairly. What does it mean when I treat everybody fairly? It does not mean by to treat everybody fairly means that you treat them the same. According to the Jewish tradition, it means fairness or justice means to be able to treat everyone differently. So when you look at tools, you look at tools like the skill and will matrix. Very easy. They got 4 metrics, right? Low skill, high will, you guide. High skill, high will, you delegate. Direct and all that thing. Okay, direct. You direct when it's low skill, low will. Excite when it's high skill, low will. These are good tools. But if you do not realize that by using these tools, you are actually learning to treat people differently. And in doing so, you are being fair. You are being fair according to the person's skill or will. Okay? Another part of positive leadership is about loneliness in leadership. People say, I'm a leader, so I cannot mix with friends and I don't have friends. Hey, this friends is a problem. If you don't deal with this as part of positive leadership, you got a problem. You got to have friends. You need friends, right? And there are many methods of understanding. One is one of the best methods, okay? Well, right? And this is where on the top of the, you are here, your mountain of life, you got your first tier friend, your close, you got your strangers, your first tier friends, your second tier friends, pretty good friends, your not really good friends, your acquaintances. You got to have this map every time to know where people stand, right? Because you need to have friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for a lifetime. One of the good books that you can refer to, friends, is 8 Vital Friends by Tom Rath, also a Gallup book. You got different people at different stages of your life will step into your life. Some of them are your builders. Some of them are champions. Some of them are collaborators, right? Right. Some of them are companions. Some of them are connectors. Some of them are energizers. Some of them open mind openers. Some are navigators. Different people come into your life. Be observant. Then you won't be lonely. Then you don't treat friends, just use the word friends or acquaintance or colleagues kind of thing. But you know who would actually give you the support that you need. Friendship is a very important topic that I teach in our certificate for workplace leadership. Because after we left school, many of us may have lost our ability to make up friends. And then we work together. Working together becomes important. And working together begins with trust. Remember these words of Stephen Covey. Without trust, we don't truly collaborate. We merely coordinate and at best cooperate. It is trust that transforms a group of people into a team. And this is trust. Trust brings us to psychological safety. At psychological safety, what does it mean? We dare to have conflict. When we dare to have conflict, we dare to have commitment because we can agree to disagree. And we dare to agree, disagree because there is accountability. And then we get to results. Otherwise, results, people want results. People want P&L, is just there a number by itself. But below it is hollow. So in conclusion, my friends, in conclusion, we say that the purpose of leader, we said, is to ensure, okay, that all the 4 dimensions of leadership are being addressed. This means that the leader does not always have to lead from the front, can delegate kind of thing, right? Can share part of their responsibility for leadership. However, the buck stops with the leader. Simon Sinek, favorite. The responsibility of leadership is not just to come up with all the ideas, but to create an environment in which great ideas thrive. But remember, as you pursue to be a leader, look in your mirror and comfort yourself. You are a leader to some people some of the time, but not a leader to all the people all the time. Because at the end of the day, you will still have employees or staff who are engaged, staff who are not engaged, and staff who are actively disengaged. You will continue to have all of these people. But the point, ladies and gentlemen, is this. In the journey of positive leadership, at the end of your day, you are able to stand with your hand on your chest and say that I have learned to love my neighbor as myself. That at the end of the day, you are able to stand and say that the talents God have given to me, I have maximized them. And most of all, at the end of the day, you have defined yourself as the Christian in the workplace. That's the purpose of it. So if you have changed, if you change nothing, nothing will change. So my friends, it is not a difficult thing to adopt positive leadership. What we need to do is to go back here. What we need to do is to go back to the fact, okay, that it begins with you. It is a strength-based approach. You need to know who you are, who are the others, what others say of you, embrace the differences, being fair, build relationship, and know what is it called, what is defined as working together. You need to define what you mean as working together. So, thank you. And I've left the space for Q&A so that we could have a very robust conversation now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. It's always good to hear how you speak passionately about this subject. And for those of you who have gone through this, you probably can suspect this is probably how Jeremy will lead in his organization. It's not going to be a kind, just friendly, buddy-buddy kind of person, but he will operate according to his conviction and stick up for you when it matters. Now, there's been, I've got a couple of questions, but I'd like to defer to those participants who have asked. Now, the first question is asked by Tan Xin Cheng. He asked, how best should one respond to where there's bad or weak leadership, and this bad or weak leadership does not play to our strengths?
Well, put it this way. Sometimes we say good or bad leadership. Back to the point. You are a leader to some people some of the time, but not a leader to all the people all the time. So what sometimes we deem to be bad leadership, other people next to us actually condone those sort of leadership. So how are you going to, you need to convince your peers who condone that type of leadership to say that that is bad leadership. You yourself cannot actually judge is bad leadership unless all of you have a consensus as to whether or not that leadership is bad. And if you all consent, right, to the fact that that leadership is bad, then that is the first step towards rectifying that kind of leadership. But if everybody is waiting for the next step down the line to say something about that leader, then nothing is going to happen. To define that there is bad leadership, you and your peers all must agree to that. And if you and your peers all agree to that, you don't need even to do anything. The management will take notice of what you say as a group. And you must be prepared to work as a group. Because if as a group, you're all not convinced that it's bad, it will not be. That's why organizations have got bad leadership. Because the whole organization, people say, oh, la, you know, my career, la, you know, my da, da, da. Everybody got their own agenda. So organizations get away with bad leadership because nobody will dare to say, nobody will come together and say that they are bad. Okay, so that will be my response to anything that anybody says is bad leadership.
So which comes to the second somewhat complementary question. Then how best should one respond when the leadership, him or herself, does not realize or admit to their own weaknesses?
Again, we use the word weaknesses, right? Yeah. If you then have the positive psychology, the positive leadership, we are saying, right? So it depends on what we say weakness. If we say weakness is that this guy is constantly sexually harassing you. Hey, this is an item that you would take up the stick and go after this person and it'll be wrong, right? Because he has got this, he has got this tendency to sexually harass people. That is a weakness itself. But if you could, for example, say that, you know, this weakness of this person is actually very talkative. Talk and talk and talk and talk, just like me, right? Then you can say that, okay, the problem here isn't the fact that he's talkative, he's just overusing his communication strength. Then can we just caution him, hey, you know, can I take it easy, you know? Can you give other people a chance to, and somebody would moderate him or her, just like Pak Hua always moderate me when I talk, right? Because he always know that I'm very talkative. So he always moderate me so that other people, when I get carried away, so that is my weakness. That's my weakness. But I have a friend here who actually tells me about that. So when we talk about weakness, it's not fixing, you know, it's not fixing the person, right? We don't fix the person. Just like when we sin, God does not fix us, you know. But guess what, you know, we learn to move from the negative side of our strength to the more positive side of our strength.
I
Does that
suppose,
answer the question?
well, in a sense, but I'm just putting myself in his shoes, that if your boss doesn't realize you talk too much, for example, no, how do we gently hint so that so that he can see his blind spot now? No.
Well, it depends. You know, this is a Chinese way of doing your hinting here and there. Hinting don't work. Okay? Stop being Chinese, okay? Stop being Singaporean. Hinting don't work, okay? If you need to tell somebody something, have the courage to say, may I have a conversation with you? This it is not perhaps what you like to hear, but but overall, all of us believe that, you know, you have got this problem. But all your colleagues also must that thing, because he will turn around and say, hey, do you all say the same thing? And all the rest chicken out, then you got a problem, right? So you don't do that until you make sure that all these guys are no longer chicken, you know, that in their new life, they are all bulls, okay, not chicken, right? If they are got chicken, that means to say this law, right? You go and tell your boss, then after that, your boss turn around and then they're all chicken out, then you got a problem, okay? So that's the reality of life, right?
Okay, thank you for this. I suppose it's
I would like to respond, since we are talking about weakness. Somebody here under George to say, I mean, weaknesses can equate to areas of improvement. Yeah, definitely areas of improvement. And if you look at the Gallup strength, and if any of you want it, let me know. I will give you one of the articles, that one of the tables that we have. When we look at strength, we also look at the positive as well as the negative side of strength. And sometimes you overplay your strength. That becomes the negative. That becomes your weakness. Okay? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I mean, I really like what you say. It reminds me of what theologian says, that when God transforms us, He doesn't make us into another person. He makes me more like me, but in a sanctified way, so that the kind of edge that we have, our strengths are double-edged swords, so that it cuts in the right way and don't cut people the wrong way.
Right. You know, there's another saying that goes back, you know, some people, especially these people out there who are called themselves life coaches. Okay, this, if you talk about the book of Revelations and astrology and all the false prophet, all these people who call themselves coaches are all the false prophets. This is the worst bunch of people on earth you can find, right? Really, these guys are the greatest crackpots that we have walking on the streets. When we talk about, you know, they have the audacity to say, I can change somebody. Like somebody wrote, there's a quotation somewhere, I cannot remember who. You don't actually change somebody, okay? It's just that the person never revealed himself to you. You'll never be able to, only God can change somebody. But He never revealed themselves to you, and you don't know enough of that person.
Yeah. Now, on this note, right? Since the context of this talk is about the executive certificate in workplace leadership, and in my conversations with you also, you cited this very interesting quote from Lee Kuan Yew, that he says that I've never seen a leadership program make a leader. So what are the weaknesses of leadership programs, and how do you think a proper leadership program ought to be? Maybe we can tie back to what we have designed.
Yeah, Lee Kuan Yew, that quote is one of my favorite quotes from Lee Kuan Yew, right? And it throws many people who are trainers off the, off their saddle. The point is this: most leadership programs, and I've gone through many of these through my career. The most dissatisfying thing coming out of a leadership program is that you got no tools. People must teach you how to use tools, even at doctoral level, right? They teach us leadership and all that thing. MBA, go through all that. You go through and you learn all the theories about it, but when you need to execute, what are the tools? You don't even have an appreciation of where, I found out myself by attending the courses myself, DISC, Gallup, Belbin, to understand the differences myself. If you don't give people the tools to be leaders, after the training course is just another training course. People must have the tools. Not only must they have the tools, the most important thing, when we designed the workplace leadership thing, the most important thing out of a leadership program is that at the end of the leadership program, people must be able to write their leadership philosophy. This is so important, and I learned this back in 1988 when I first met Peter Drucker. And we were having a executive retreat, right? And I was a spare tire, right? There was an empty space, and then they say, oh yeah, this guy from Singapore can go to attend. So I went. I don't even know who Peter Drucker was at that time. The only reason why I joined the seminar was because they say you can go to Princeton University, and I was so desperate to see what Princeton University looked like. I don't even know who the hell Peter Drucker was at that time. So anyway, I went there, and then after the evening cocktail, Peter Drucker said, okay, can you next morning write your leadership philosophy and we'll discuss that. Wow, those days, but we didn't have Google. So whole night I figure out what on earth is called leadership philosophy. Next morning, all the Ang Mo wake up, and then, we all go breakfast. I say, wow, gone case, man. I sabo myself by attending this workshop and do not know what the word leadership philosophy is. And lo and behold, I discovered all the other Ang Mohs also all do not know what leadership philosophy. And I walk away from that day to say that as a leader, I must know how to write my philosophy. And this is something I've practiced myself. This is something that I have practiced myself for the last 30 years, how to figure out writing out my philosophy. That becomes your operating mantra. So when Lee Kuan Yew said that, he did not meet me. If he had met me, I would have told him that their trainers at the Civil Service College did not tell them to write their leadership philosophy. And that's why he found leadership training so poor.
Now, Jeremy, just to, I think also to moderate things a little bit, because in our private conversation, we talk a lot about coaching. In fact, you shared with me rather good tools about coaching. I suppose where you're coming from also, when you're kind of shoot from a hip kind of approach towards talking about life coaches, it's more of when life coaches over respond, over promises that they can change you. That's when the trouble starts. But yeah, asking the right questions to help you to think through the difficult questions of life is where they should be situating themselves.
Correct. In fact, one of the things I will talk about during the EWL during the course is actually leading by questions, right? That you stop talking, and leading by question is one of the practices I try to do. If you ask me any one of the questions out there, if you ask me, say, hey, what is this thing, Jeremy, that you're talking about fixing weakness? Yeah, I would use that. I would use the asking questions rather than me telling you. I would learn to ask questions, and by me asking you questions, or people asking each other questions, you sort of open each other's mind to more things, to more conversation. Coaching conversations are rich conversations, but trying to coach and telling you that you can change people's life, If they can do that, we can close the church. You don't need to have church anymore. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Now, next question now. What would you say is the most important thing about positive leadership, and what's the most critical thing to avoid about being a negative leader? Well,
I think the thing about being a positive leader is a very intentional thing. It's a very intentional thing to know, number one, that you are starting from a strength-based approach. That when you see a situation, you ask the situation, could it be done better if you have actually applied your strength? Rather than talking about the failure kind of thing. So it's a constant, looking at the person, and even if the person is under performance improvement plan, you want to look at the person and say, okay, based on your strength, and this is the parable of the talent, based on your strength, how do you think you can perform better? And strength is all about that, how you can perform better. And unless you as a leader consistently ask this sort of question, ask not only of your employees, your staff, but ask of yourself. That is not going to be ingrained in you. You need to ask to make this as part of your conversation. And then when people give you feedback, you must also know how to receive the feedback. Good and bad, you must know how to receive the feedback. And you must also have a mechanism to be able, and this is where friends are important. I showed you something on friends. Knowing who you can turn to help you develop certain things. And different people will appear in different times of your life to make your life richer. But you must first identify them. Whether your 8 vital friends or your first tier, second tier, third tier friends. But friends for a reason, friends for a season. Friends forever. Okay.
thanks, Jeremy. Actually, the of the 4 modules in the executive certificate in workplace leadership, the second is actually about spiritual formation and the leader. And what I liked about what you have said about positive leadership is that the spiritual principles that will be taught there, basically one of the key things is to have a realistic understanding of who you are and not have false expectation of both for yourself and also for others. I think that's actually a trait of positive leadership, right? We encounter our subordinates, we expect them to be here, but actually they are here. And then we struggle with why everybody has failed me.
Yep.
Or we struggle with we have failed ourselves because we expect ourselves to be here, but we're actually here.
Yep.
And so the way to close that gap is not more theory, but really spiritual disciplines.
Yeah. Maybe I'd like to answer the question about the differences between DISC, Belting.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Number one is let's take a look at DISC. Among the 3, DISC has got different providers. They got no one single. You got people's key. You got so some of them will give you their reports in a circle. Some will give you a bar chart and all that thing. Though more or less the same and the same way of interpret, and they have got different ways of interpreting kind of thing. But if you ask me, this is personal opinion. DISC tends, in my case, that you got to find the permutation. And then the permutation will lead you to a certain personality, advocate, principle, and all that kind of thing. It brings you to that. And actually, DISC stops there. DISC stops there. It is simple. And DISC can be as simple as asking 10 questions, and then you can use different colors, different answers, and how many colors they'll try to, rule of thumb, something in the air. You are DISC. So it's the most crude, if you ask me. It's the most crude of the 3. Gallup is strength-based. For individual, it is the best. Starting off, you need to know your strength. And I did Gallup because I believe in the parable of the talents, right? And Gallup is a very good way of you actually understanding yourself. It's probably one of the best way of understanding yourself, in my view, right? Based on your strength, based on your top 5 strength, Gallup will tell you that you are 1 in 33 million. Your top 5 combination can. So Gallup is a very good tool. Okay, for if you are looking at yourself. But if you got team, you move out from Gallup to team, you must use another Gallup tool called Builder Profile. The two are not as linked together. And Gallup on a team side, though they would disagree, they say, yeah, you can do all of these things. They are nowhere good in building teams. Though I have found a way of doing it, kind of thing, when I have to use Gallup. If you ask me for officers kind of thing, to start off, Belbin is perhaps the best. Because Belbin allows you what we call, not only you do your own perception assessment, other people will also assess you. So both Gallup and DASC, you do your assessment. And because you do your assessment, there could be certain bias. Though in Gallup's way, they say, well, you have to assess, in split second, you got to answer the 177 questions in split second. Some truth in that, but not all the truth. Okay. And then understanding the top 5, running with the top 5 takes you quite some time. The most practical I found is Belbin. Belbin was originally developed in the 1980s, earlier than Gallup. And it was developed by the Henley Business School under the auspices of the British government to understand how the British administrative services work. So Belbin does a 360. Not only you assess yourself, but other people assess you. That's why you have that. And Belbin goes a step further, perhaps the only one compared to the other two. It allows you to also do a weightage of your job description, of whether or not your perception and so forth can actually fit into a certain role, a certain job. So if you ask me, of the 3, Belbin is the most comprehensive. But if you ask me for coaching purposes, one-to-one, I would tend to want to use Gallup. I will use DISC, yes, but DISC I got to use in relation to others. I got other tools to put together with another 4 other tools or so, something like that. Okay, so different tools got different things. I know certain companies love DISC, certain companies love Gallup, certain companies love Belbin. Okay, they love it. They love it simply because the HR guy loves it. That's all, not because of anything else. HR guy got no idea about what the rest is, so they love it, kind of thing. So I know all the 3. I can tell them what to love, what not to love, right? But they love it. After the HR guy gone, another HR guy come, they all change, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, there are 2 more questions, and then we can finish up. Now, what if a leader is focusing on securing his or her interests as the top priority? You just put priority on owning the idea.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So what, you have a boss who basically just wants to protect their own self-interest. If there's an idea, he says, this is my idea. What do we do with such a boss? Yeah.
Well, put it this way, one of the ways you do it now is to actually understand who the other party is. Just like in the case of, let's say you use the Belbin thing, right? The chances of he is this kind, he is considered a shaper, right? This is my idea, I want to push it through. Under the Belbin characterization, this person will be a shaper. And Belbin has actually certain suggestions how you actually deal with shaper, right? And one of the ways you could deal with, and not everybody, this is where the concept of team roles become very important. That you must find out from this manager who he actually trusts to actually counter him. If he is somebody like like a shaper. You cannot put somebody like a completer finisher, because the guy will bash into him, because the other guy is timeline, deadline, and all that thing. But you may need a more sober person, another character called the monitor evaluator. That is one way of solving it. Another way of solving it, if your guys you go to organizationalzoo.org. It shows you, Arthur Shelley will show you all the types of behaviors inside there. And one the thing about team dynamics is that when these things come out, you need to be able to pick the cards and actually try to influence the situation. Being able to influence team situation requires a lot of maturity. I will be introducing a bit of organizational zoo in module 3 section 2, so that people can have these cards. You need to buy a set of cards, and then you can play around and figure out what kind of behaviors should be right. Okay.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. I think the last question actually is quite helpful. What are your thoughts on servant leadership, and how is it similar or different from positive leadership?
Okay, this idea of servant leadership is another piece of rubbish. Okay, it's another piece of rubbish. Anybody is just to make a very big differentiation that you should not lead from the front. Right? It's similar to, a servant leader cannot not be a positive leader. If you want to have servant leadership, it's not only serving, it's not only trying to be like Jesus Christ washing everybody's feet, right? But to serve has got its definition, has got its perspective. And to serve means what? It's also to respect. If you just take away the word servant leadership, or rather you put the word servant, you ask the last set of my slides. You ask whether the servant leadership talks about trust, whether it talks about building psychological safety, whether servant leadership thinks about agree, disagree to get commitment, whether servant leadership thinks about, servant leadership thinks about getting what you call accountability, responsibility, and getting results. Most people talk about servant leadership without thinking about results. And that is a very big pitfall of it. We all lead for a purpose. We all lead towards a result, towards a goal. We all don't lead for the sake of feeling good, making everybody, oh, buddy, buddy, buddy. We are all feeling good. Then you got no results. That's the problem. If you have positive leadership, then you can then say, hey, I also hate this word that we all use in Singapore. It is all right to fail. Hello, don't ever say that. It's not positive leadership. Like I told you guys, right? You tell a servant, you tell a surgeon it's all right to fail. Before you go operation, you tell a surgeon it's all right to fail. Just imagine our minister, it's all right to fail. Then he's going to operate on the surgeon. It's all right to fail. Good, you got the guts to say it's all right to fail. You go and tell a pilot it's all right to fail. Let's get the vocabulary right. Right? Some jobs you cannot afford mistakes. You need a very high C. Those kind of jobs. People who are pedantic, people can go step by step by step by step. You need those people, that's why God made them, You don't tell these people that failure is all right, making mistakes is all right. Not everything means make mistakes all right. So when you look at the profiling, like somebody wrote there, DISC used most common. But DISC don't tell you that if the guy is a DI, dominant, high-strung dominant, DIDC, Your boss DC, both are, you will have a time of your life, man. Your boss a DC, and then you happen to be a S, steady, don't rock the boat, very frightened, frightened of being what you call rejected and all that thing. Then you were under tremendous psychological stress. But that's why we avoid in those kind of situations, we avoid DSC. We rather get the conversation, the new vocabulary in terms of strength. Then the boss said, oh, I'm command. Oh, but how does my command strength mix with my other strength? And that's how you can do coaching and water him down, but not change him, but water him down. I hope I've answered that question. That's my favorite question, mate. All this servant leadership thing. Wow, this servant leadership thing gets on my nerve, really gets on my nerve.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. And if you want to hear more of him, actually, we welcome you to consider signing up for the Executive Certificate in Workplace Leadership. Maybe just let me, as we come to a close, let me just flesh that out for Sing Kong. Can you flesh that out for us? The 4 modules. Yep. Well, basically, what we will do have is that the module 1, which starts actually next Wednesday, and you can sign up either for 1 or all 4, is that it will introduce the Christian perspective of calling, work, and business stewardship, even looking at models. So the difference here is that, yes, there's theory, but you will be provided with quite a lot of tools. In module 1, you look at the tool called SAW and also the business canvas model. The heart of leadership is basically more tools, but from a spiritual formation point of view, how do you safeguard yourself? How do you develop emotional regulation so that you can do what needs to be done? This personal, intimate, personal leadership, again, there is some theory, but there's lots of tools because Gallup and Business Profile 10 is going to be used there. And finally, to help you to consolidate your learning from the three modules, is implementing workplace leadership. And this is where you basically write your philosophy of leadership so that you can prepare yourself for the journey ahead. So I will leave it as this. And now, can we have the next slide? Now, to those of you who are interested to sign up, you can sign up for all 4 modules at a discounted fee rather than $2,100 at $1,950. Each module is actually 4 sessions long, so you're looking at about 10 hours per module. So it's quite a good value for money. But on top of that, we are, because it's the first cohort, we are introducing the Strengths Finder assessment for free and also the Builder Profile assessment for free. And on top of that, also, next slide, you also get a worksheet by Karen Martin with this special price. Now, some of you may be wondering, could we pay this for installment? It can be done, but what needs to be done is that you have to pay for everything in full first. 1950. You can buy everything, individual modules, sequentially as you complete in the full price. Then once you have paid for everything, we just reimburse you and reduce the discount down to 1950. So we welcome you to consider to sign up for the class. Come in and try for the first module, which starts next Wednesday, which basically look at your calling as a Christian in the workplace, because you are priest for Christ over there, but also what kind of tools you can use to be responsible Christian, a missional Christian in the workplace. So module 1, as you see here, is 1 and 2 are basically theory, 3 and 4 are basically tools. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Now, to end off also, 24th April, we are going to also have another free public lecture on Zoom called Workplace Discipleship in the Pandemic Age. If you're interested, go to the BJSD website or use this this link here to sign up. Basically, it's a reflection that now they're working from home. Now the work has changed so much by the COVID-19. What can we do as Christians to respond and still flourish at our workplace? Moving on to the next slide. So, Singkong, next slide. Yeah. So if you like to find out, try module 1 or want to sign up for the whole program, just talk to us. Just email Ms. Yap Fong Lin. She's the Ops Director, and she's also handling all the inquiries. So take a snapshot of this, and she should be also, she's the one who will send you all the emails inquiry. So feel free to contact us. So with that, I bring the talk to an end. Thank you, Jeremy, once again for this delightful talk, where we see not only your understanding of theory, tools, but also quite a fair bit of your colorful character. And so I always tell my friends, though, welcome to Dr. Jeremy Gree. This is who he is. Just accept him for who he is. So thank you once again. It's been a delightful time, and good evening to all of you. And I wish you a reflective Holy Week as we meditate on the love of our Lord Jesus Christ as he goes upon the cross for us. Thank you and good night.